standing now on the north shore of County Down, close to where Belfast Lough flows into the Irish Sea, at a place named Craigavad. My name's Mark Doherty. It's my pleasure to work for Turas, the cultural organisation in East Belfast. The reason I'm here today is to introduce a story of the stone chair of Clandeboye. The O'Neills of Ulster were the most powerful tribe in Ireland, and one of their septs used to own this land, many hundreds of square miles. There's virtually no evidence left of that ancient Gaelic kingdom, but there's one exception, and that's what I'm talking about today, the stone chair of Clandeboye. Sometime, possibly as much as 600 years ago, a stone was seen on this shore that looked curiously like a chair. The tribal leaders decided they would bring that stone and take it up to the hills, to the Castlereagh Hills, and they would use that for the inauguration of their chieftains. Okay, Dennis, you're going to make a copy of the Clandeboye stone for us. Can you explain the process of turning into reality, making a model of such an irregular object?
Well, basically what we'd do is we'd start off with a block of polystyrene, and luckily enough that you've actually been able to give us a three-dimensional model of it on the computer, and we've taken that model and then we will project that image onto the block of polystyrene, and from that we will then shape out the basic outline of the profile of the stone. And then once we have the profile shape from sides and the front, we'll then take that and then use small tools and wire brushes to refine the shape and rough up the surface and add in all the finer details. Once that's done in the base polystyrene form, we will then add resins and fiberglasses onto that to create a hard shell surface on the stone. And then we will take that and detail that further beyond the fiberglass to give it a natural stone texture.
What you're listening to now is the March of the O'Neills. This is the ancient battle tune of the O'Neills, who dominated Ulster before the plantation. So they ruled in the north of Ireland for many centuries. And where we are now is in one of their territories of North Down called Clandeboye. Listen to Brainy Rath at the very height of the Castlereagh Hills with a phenomenal panorama over the Clandeboye terrain, an area covering over 250 square miles. Close to here in the hills stood the tower house of the Clandeboye O'Neills, and it was known as Castlereagh. They had a phenomenal view over the city. Of course, there was nothing there, say 600 years ago, and they had a wonderful view looking down Belfast Lough over their terrain, and beside that castle stood their inauguration stone, the inauguration stone of the Clandeboye O'Neills. So we're actually walking the path between those two sites. And on the inauguration site, still in existence, I'm glad to say, but in dense woodland, is an earthen mound. And on top of that earthen mound stood the stone chair of the Clandeboye O'Neills. A professional geologist has examined this stone, which still exists, and he has established where it was sourced. So we know that this rude stone that stood on this mound came from the shore of Belfast Lough, the shore of North Down, at a place called Craigavad.
Yeah, so we come to the shore here at Craigavad on the south side of Belfast Lough. And the reason for doing that really is that there's some actually very interesting rocks exposed on the shore here. Not very spectacular, but really quite important for this sort of whole story. And they're a series of sandstones that were laid down probably on a river plain about 350 million years ago in what's called the Carboniferous period. And I think that's maybe where the stone from which the chair was hewn ultimately came from here. This is one of them where those sandstone beds get a lot thicker. You know, they might get 1 metre, 2 metres thick. and they actually then become worth quarrying for building stones or chairs.
I've been prowling this shore, wondering where this would have originally been lying.
Yes.
And how long ago it was that it was picked up from that spot.
Yes, of course, you know, it may be hundreds of years ago that the chair was found or hewn, and so you would have had a bit of marine erosion since then to sort of round off any corners from quarrying. But so we might not find the exact spot that it came from, but what I did was I was looking at the stone of which the chair is actually made, and you're looking for particular types of minerals within it, and then comparing it with the rocks that we actually find on the shore here. So it's got a bit of forensic work, and in that way you can dismiss various other possibilities elsewhere in Northern Ireland, and it really comes down to this. This is the nearest place to Castlereagh.
Right.
You wouldn't want to heave that chair very far.
No, and tell me, is the rock that distinctive that you could make as specific an identification as this of its original source?
Yeah, it's fairly distinctive because it contains quite a range of different types of sort of pebbles within it, and so that's what we're looking at. So sometimes you'll get a kind of sandy pebble bed, and it'll just have one or two different kind of pebble types in it,
yes,
and they're all the same sort of size. Whereas with the chair, the pebbles are quite different sizes, and the minerals, they're different colours and things like that. And so that's what we're looking for, you see. And it's I was quite struck by how good a match it was.
So is this a likely sort of location?
Yeah, a little bit further out, just out there, across the rock pools and things. I think is, could be one of the
source.
places.
I must say it does look the part.
Yeah, really. There's only one more spot, which is about 5 minutes walk that way, where these sandstone beds actually get thick enough that you could actually remove a chair, and this is the best spot really. And it certainly looks as though it's been quarried in the past. You've got these really quite sharp sort of angular faces. They've not suffered a huge amount of erosion by waves and such like, because it's quite a hard sort of sandstone. So I think, yeah, could well have come from here. And
I could imagine them lavering and chiseling off chunks of this, then it would come away relatively easily. Yeah, because it's already sort of broken up into, you've got fractures, sort of cracks going through it, sort of this way and across there. And so, yeah, they could easily kind of prise blocks off along those natural fractures and heave them into a boat at low tide. Hollywood Priory is a fantastic example. It's a kind of rather... It's a lovely building, actually.
It is. It's a bit sort of untidy. They've got a hodgepodge of rocks. They've got bits of this sandstone. They've got another sort of more red sandstone, which you see at Sea Park, another kind of a mile and a half further along. And then bits of the magnesian limestone, which is about 5 minutes from here.
So would they have taken stone, would you imagine, from here as far as potentially the Castlereagh Hills to build Castlereagh? Would that have been a possibility?
Yes, I think it is. One of the problems, the Castlereagh Hills are made of a dreadful rock for building. It's really, it's very poor. It doesn't break into nice even bits.
I think possibly on a high tide they could have rowed as far as the hollow. I don't know if you're aware of the hollow.
Yeah.
I think then that would have been a practical limit. Of course, it's all been contained and altered beyond recognition now.
And what they probably would have done would have saved this rock and the limestone and the sandstone for the coins and the architraves, basically the bits around the windows and the bits along the corners.
Yes.
And they're the sort of important bits. And then quite a lot of the rest of it might have been a more rubble wall, which would have used sort of stone they get immediately sort of local. And they've done that at Carrickfergus Castle. You see that they use the limestone that we see a little bit further along the coast here. They use on the coins or the corners.
I suppose the first thing to point out is that the Clandeboye O'Neill chair is very much more a stone than a chair, because only the most rudimentary cuts were made to it to produce the chair shape. It's very much a freestanding object. It has an uneven underside or base, which leads us to believe that it must have been embedded in earth in order to make it stand upright. It's a monolith. In other words, it's hewn out of one big block of stone, in this case, quartose sandstone. The natural flaws in the stone were all retained, and no attempt at all was made to dress the stone. And That's important because a stone of the country, a very special stone of the country, was essential inauguration furniture for the chief elect to stand on or sit on the day that he was made chief. Now, the chair has a high back, which is splayed and very lopsided. It's got a low seat that slopes downwards, and it's got no arms or sides to it. This seems to be in the nature of all inauguration stones stroke thrones that we know of in the Gaelic past, and indeed further afield.
Well, the stone, if we go back to the medieval period, inauguration was a major element within all of the lordships in Ireland. If you think of the report that was done for Henry VIII, the new king, in 1515, the state of Ireland, the people who wrote the report for him were based in Dublin, and they gave him an overview of how Ireland was organised at that time. And there were 60 lordships which would have been Gaelic Irish, and there were 30 which would have been Anglo-Irish. So you have Ireland divided up into 90 political units, and each one of those political units would have had its own ruler, its own lord, and each one of those lords would have had their own inauguration site and the inauguration programme. So when you're looking at our chair here today, it's quite a unique survival, because most of these chairs, or the legs, they're gone now. And when you look at the story associated with our chair, it's quite remarkable how this was collected from the ruins of Castlereagh, the castle, and then taken down into the butter market in Belfast, and then taken to Sligo, and then purchased and brought back here to the Belfast Museum in the late 1890s. So it's a remarkable survival that we have here in Belfast. I mean, it's amazing that it wasn't broken. If we think of the famous other stone chair in Ulster of the medieval period, the Lecnerie at Tullahogue, which was the inauguration site for the greater O'Neill family, as opposed to the Clandeboye O'Neills. That chair was used, its last time it was used for inauguration was in 1595 for Hugh O'Neill, just at the beginning of the 9 Years' War. And in 1602, when the English Tudor army arrive in Tyrone, the first thing that Lord Mountjoy does is go to Tullahogue and he smashes that chair. He destroys it because it's a symbol of Gaelic lordship, and if you smash the chair, you're removing it. So in many ways, something similar could have happened to the Clandeboye chair. And what happens in the aftermath of the 9 Years' War? To the English, the Lecnerie at Tullahogue would have been viewed as a symbol of the rebellion, a symbol of the leaders of that rebellion. So if you smash that chair, you cannot have any more O'Neills being crowned. It's different here in Castlereagh because you have this tripart agreement between Con O'Neill and Hamilton and Montgomery, and the division of the states of the Clandeboys in North Down. So there's never really that same threat from the Clandeboye O'Neills. So the chair is just abandoned. It serves no purpose. There's respect shown to Con O'Neill by the newcomers into the landscape. He's not a threat to people. And I think just the chair is redundant. And that's why it's forgotten about. Whereas the Lecnerie, and we know what it looked like because we have a depiction of it by Richard Bartlett, a cartographer who came across with Mountjoy to Tyrone. And to be a great ruler, what they want to have is a really good inauguration site. And they know that their cousins in Tyrone have the Lecnerie, So they're wanting to have, similarly, their own chair. It also appeals to the Gaelic lords because they like that sense of antiquity that goes along with lordship. And to have this chair, they can then say, this is our ancient throne. It's been in the Belfast Museum now, it's in the Ulster Museum, it's there, it's protected, and it's on display, and people can come and see this inauguration chair. And what it does as well is it highlights to us how, you know, this medieval connection to Belfast. We think of Belfast as a bustling city today. It wasn't always like that. It was a rural landscape. It had a small village, castle, church in the medieval period. And it was an area where you had the Clandeboye O'Neills. This was the heart of their lordship. And the chair reminds us of that, the medieval story of Belfast.
So this chieftain was not a king as we would think of it in the English sense. This Irish chieftain was the lord of the territory, and he was considered to be the guardian of the people and of the land.
Hello everyone, my name is Frank McCoubrey and I'm the current Lord Mayor of Belfast in 2021. In 1750, this man Stuart Banks was known for going into the Castlereagh Hills and bringing down this stone chair.
Poor Con O'Neill then, he died in 1619, and then they were never chieftains or lords of Clandeboye anymore. So I'll play a sad tune for the O'Neills. So the Clandeboye O'Neills were no more, the castle fell into ruin, and this stone, this was their throne of power, so it was no use anymore. So it was taken down from the mound and it was just dumped by the ruin of the castle. So it sat by the ruin of the castle, forgotten about for 150 years.